Hi everyone. I am very excited today to introduce you guys to a incredibly interesting and amazing lady called Nora Herold. She was someone that started off as an intuitive that worked with tarot for many years, and during her exploration of the metaphysical world and self-healing, she actually stumbled across a new concept for her at the time, but something that she was intrinsically aware of since a small child, and that was the ability to channel. Now, channeling is a very kind of out there concept for a lot of people, and even when I was talking to the Baron about this, he was very dubious about me doing interviews that I really wanted to in this area, as if I was selling you guys a particular viewpoint. I want this to be an opportunity to explore all viewpoints, and I'm very fascinated to learn more. I'm very interested in finding out about how things tick, and Nora is someone that I found out about many, many years ago because I was discovering a lot about the incredible inventor Nikola Tesla. You'll be consciously aware that I've always had adoration for Nikola Tesla. There's been something about him that I've always felt a connection to. I have had him on my MySpace profile when I was 14. So if anyone has been following me for the entire duration of my work on social media, you will know of my fascination. Now, I discovered quite early on that he was claimed to be a channel. Now, whether this is true or this is just secondhand information with a spin, I'm not really aware. But as with a lot of this information, there seems to be a commonality with a lot of the intuitive guides that state that you take what you think resonates the most with you. So for me, it resonated with me, and it for some reason made sense. And looking into other prominent figures, whether on the right or the wrong side of history, there has always been this awareness of channeling. So I went into this journey of researching this phenomenon called channeling, and I went into a lot of kind of interesting groups, a lot of interesting digital forums, and one of the people that I discovered quite early on was a lady called Barbara Marciniak. Now, Barbara Marciniak was a very prominent channel during the 90s, I think the late 80s, and instead of having what the other channels referred to as angelic guides or spirits, she channeled what she described as the Pleiadian collective. So the Pleiades is a star system, it's a collective of stars, it's a galaxy we're aware of, and the Pleiades have always been a part of historical cultures, particularly in Indigenous American cultures. They actually refer to the Seven Sisters. It's actually part of a lot of car manufacturing logos. There's been so much familiarity with the Seven Stars. It's always been a fascinating realm to dive into for me. So Barbara Marciniak was someone that I was looking into for many years, and her talks and her seminars that she still does to this day are very interesting. What happened during the last 3 or 4 years is I discovered more people that channeled this Pleiadian collective or other beings that were claiming to be Pleiadians. Now, I have responded to very few people in this field. I think a lot of people are speaking, or they're getting information that's recyclable, or they're not things that I've personally found to be insightful. However, there are people that have absolutely taken the information that I have learned from studying this to a completely new dimension, and one of those people is Nora Herold. The interview today is going to be about channeling, and also get some of that information and you guys can experience firsthand the kind of thing that I'm interested in from Nora, because Nora is a very profoundly impactful healer. To anyone out there who knows Reiki, it's a form of energy healing where someone is able to connect with you and your body reacts. You are able to feel and see tangible responses to some of this work. Now, Nora is someone that's an intuitive guide. She was someone that read tarot for many years. Tarot, for people that do not know, are pictorial cards. they were actually used in many cultures and disguised as playing cards, because any playing card set can mimic the houses, and you can't do the full pictorial card reading, but you can actually use play cards and the suites to give a reading. And my grandmother was a tarot reader and gave me my first set of tarot when I was a child. I was very fascinated to hear that Nora also was connected to another channel, a lady called Wendy Kennedy, who I also connected with when I discovered her work. Now, the interesting thing about Nora's experience and her start into the Pleiadian channel, which is one of the things that she defines herself as, is that she has abilities to empathically and intuitively know the individual that she's connecting with. And again, with a lot of this work, it's interesting because the channels and the guides that come through the channels talk about the body as a form of technology, and learning about the body and how the body works is fascinating to me in so many ways, because my grandmother on my mother's side, my maternal grandmother, who, by the way, it was a very polarized upbringing for me, for anyone that didn't know, because my dad's parents were open to this stuff. My mum's parents were extremely religious. So even having a book that had pictorials of witches in, I was told off by my granddad, who was an evangelical church leader. So my grandmother, who had cancer over the course of about 22 years, she maintained such light and such positivity and such hope that despite having tumours in a number of organs, she maintained an amazing life for all that time. And she was an example, even though she was religious, of how the belief in something can impact her experience. So whatever specific belief system you navigate through, it is always the same thing. It's a case of how you create your own reality. And Nora talks in great detail of Galactic history. It took the information that I learned from Barbara Marciniak into the next realm. She explains a lot of the phenomena on the planet, which I think is very interesting. And she explores things from both a metaphysical way and a healing way. So when listening to her, you find out a lot of information, and it's very, it has an impact on your body, and you definitely should note the reaction when listening to her, because you will need to be conscious of that. And also they recommend that you drink more water, that you allow the energy in your body to clear out quicker by doing so. So today is a very exciting opportunity for me to go into this a little bit further. So if that was a kind of introduction for the first time to channeling, this will be a very exciting and insightful interview for you. So let's go in today with the fabulous Nora Herold, whose information I will supply at the end, and we'll see what you think. So Nora, firstly, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me. I have been an avid listener to your work for some years now, and I wanted to share a bit about your work to my audience. So a lot of people know, they know what a psychic or a medium is. From what I've read and what I've listened to, you began as a tarot reader and an intuitive, and your work led you to the word channeling and to actually physically channeling. Could you explain a little bit about what channeling is to someone that has never heard of this before?
Absolutely. And first, let me just say thank you so much, Joe, for having me on and sharing me and my work and the experience of channeling and the expansion of consciousness with your audience. I'm super excited to be here, so thank you.
Not as excited as me. I'm like literally dying.
No, I'm more excited than you are.
Oh, yay.
Okay, we'll be equally excited.
Yes,
there we
go.
Let's take competition out of it, because that simply just dims our light, which, that's one of the huge messages the Pleiadians bring through, of course, is that we're raised, all of us, and indoctrinated and brainwashed and mind controlled into this extremely competitive reality where we're constantly trying to win, and that's very survival based. Yes. And all that does is separate us and keep us apart and dim our lights. So collaborating like this with you, Joe, and your light. It really brings me a tremendous amount of joy. I love collaboration.
Thank you.
Okay, to answer your question, what the hell is channeling, right? So, yeah, when I first heard the word, so I was 29 years old when it was 1996. I was sitting in, it was November, so I was sitting in the apartment of my dear friend, Amy, and we were reading each other's cards, right? So I'd been playing with tarot for almost a decade at that point because I had wanted a tool, I think just like you, right, to expand my intuitive and psychic abilities. And I was raised Catholic. So I have this very interesting dichotomy of feeling very psychic, very intuitive, and also being told, no, you're not allowed to do that. Right? Yeah. So we share that. We share that in common. But then my parents got divorced, and my mother got remarried, so she couldn't take mass anymore. That's, the Catholic church law. Yes. You're divorced, you're right. So then we stopped going to church, so that was very freeing for me in my teens. So I played with tarot in my early 20s, all through my 20s, and I was attracted to crystals. But I kept feeling like there was this other thing I was looking for. There was something, and I didn't know what it was. And so 1996, November, I'm sitting there with my friend Amy, and she says to me, hey, I've made a new friend. Her name is Wendy. So I'm talking about Wendy Kennedy here.
Yes.
Another, really well-known Pleiadian channel, and she channels other beings as well. And Amy said, so I've met this woman, Wendy. I'm waiting tables with her, and I was also waitressing at the time in another restaurant. And funny, Amy and I met working together at Victoria's Secret. So I think that I just find that hilarious that this very significant person in my life on my spiritual path and spiritual awakening I would have met working at Victoria's Secret, right? I met her literally. She was hanging panties on a wall the very first time I met Amy. So she said, Wendy channels. And I said, okay, what's that? Right? Like my whole body responded to the word when she said Wendy channels. And she said, well, she talks with her spirit guides. And I said, okay, that's the thing. That's what I've been looking for. And I think that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So, my very simple definition of the word channeling is simply putting energy into recognizable form.
Right.
My particular version of channeling, so we all channel, right? Every single one of us takes energy, runs it through our bodies, and expresses it in some way via some form.
Yes.
I do a form of spoken word channeling, where I direct voice channel the beings that I work with. The Pleiadians, Ursula, who is a fairy. She's kind of new in the last 6 months or so, new to my work, although she is not new as a being to me at all. Maybe we'll talk about that a bit later, who she is.
Okay.
She's a fairy. The Lyrans and Lemurians and the Angelics and Yeshua. I've worked with many beings now over decades. So that's just my very simple explanation of what channeling is. It's putting energy into some kind of direct physical form.
Sure, because I think a lot of people that are interested in arts, or they research about their favourite poet or musician, they often find that the way that these magical pieces of art come to be, they often say comes through like a channel. It comes through from somewhere and it happens. And I'm sure everyone has that experience where they're in that amazing, comfortable zone in themselves, and then they produce their best work if they were an artist and things like that. And what you do is you translate it, and it kind of comes through your voice.
Correct.
When I started to listen about a lot of these channels come through and a lot of the messages come through, it was kind of from about 10 years ago. And I've heard you mention in your work quite a few times that there has been some sort of specific timeline things that have really changed the game, so to speak, because the information that you've brought through that I listened to, that I'm sure everyone that listens to this would love to dive into, and you can search all over YouTube on your website for more of your work. But there was almost like a shift that happened in 2012, and I wanted to know if you could explain to people a little bit about that, because I think a lot of people kind of clicked into this sort of like interweb thing that was going on with people that were a little bit more aware.
Absolutely, yes. So prior to the winter solstice of 2012, we were running a particular game here on planet Earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that game had very specific rules. It was the third dimensional game. And within the context of the third dimension, time is linear, matter is solid, and you cannot create something out of nothing. You can take one form and change it to something else, but you can't wave your hand in the air and just poof, create something, right? Pull energy out of a portal from somewhere and create something new. So we were using law of attraction while third dimensional beings, fully third dimensional prior to 2012, to attract realities to us. Mm-hmm. And I think the place where people would really get tripped up when it comes to law of attraction is the emphasis was on the use of the mental body and affirmation and thoughts and ideas. And if you just held a thought for long enough, you would make it happen. You could bring it about. And a lot of people tried that, and a lot of people felt they were not successful at it and thought the whole law of attraction thing was either BS or they just weren't very adept at it. They were failing at it. They were not good at it.
Yes.
So from my perspective, when we were full-on attractors, we were not using our mental bodies to attract our realities to us. We were using our emotional bodies to attract our realities to us. So very often, our affirmations, our thoughts, our ideas are far beyond where we actually are emotionally in the moment. So if you're holding a thought that says, I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm rich, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But the emotional resonance that you're holding is, I have no value. I have no sense of self. I am broken. I am lost. You're going to create more from that space, again, in the 3D game, using law of attraction, than you are from your mental body. That is a very kind of simplified way to help people understand that. We are actually much more complex than that.
Yes.
But yes, that is along the lines of what I'm saying, right? You can't really create something, you can't attract something to you that you aren't on some level able to access within yourself. Now, most of us are a patchwork of emotions and feelings about every subject there is, right? So for anybody who is feeling poor, you also are able to access a feeling of richness, abundance, and prosperity. And typically, but that contrast sits in our emotional body or sits in our field. So when we run law of attraction, we usually pull in something that offers us a variety of experiences, right?
Sure.
Because that's what we're holding in our emotional bodies. But I found a lot of people getting really frustrated because they thought, oh, if I just focus on a thought for a long period of time, and then I'll make it happen. And we are more complex and more advanced than that in the way we attract and create.
There was something funny that happened to me, which I think my audience will have noticed, because my grandmother, who I mentioned, my paternal grandma, who was very clairvoyant, she wrote messages in a coffee table book to me that I didn't discover until 2012. And It was messages about how I would go forwards, if you will. And it was kind of almost like a lesson she was teaching me about how to get into that creative space, because when I was in 2012, I was this sort of LGBT example of I had loads of talent, but I wasn't able to go into spaces that most of my peers were able to. And I started to do blogs, and I started to actually visualize and create things that would happen. And I'd record And I say it like I had a dream about it, but I didn't really have a dream about it. I had like a thing, I kind of was making it happen in my mind. And everything that I recorded actually came to be, including this 3 years before I met my partner. I was describing his home in a video that was on my channel, and people didn't realize the spirituality side of my work at all. They thought everything was kind of the makeup stuff, but it was a funny, tangible way to bring people who have seen my stuff into this convo in a little bit more of a realistic way, because it was 2012 when I realized that could happen, and it was my grandma's messages in the book that showed me that, which I think was interesting. And I wanted to talk to you about this because I don't get to talk to many spiritual the experts. I don't know what the correct term is. But
yeah, right? You don't have language that takes us out of competition. I love that you call yourself there, right? Like expert, right? That's a competitive term. I don't know what the hell to call myself either, right? I call myself, an incarnate guide.
Yes.
But it's taken me decades to own that as my truth. And I've only been able to own it, that I'm an incarnate guide, because I also recognize every being here is an incarnate guide.
Yes, yes.
So I could only claim that as an identifier when I realized, so is everyone else, right? When I took my ego completely out of it, and either the superior aspect of my ego that wants to think I'm better than everyone else, right? And then the counter to that, the inferior version of me that feels like crap about herself, where, certainly as a quote-unquote expert, I still have my shit, right?
Sure.
Oh, I hope I can swear.
Yes, oh my God, no, help yourself. I'm fully open to swearing. So when you first discovered this, it wasn't common practice to even talk about the idea of channeling or spirit guides, because I think there's a book called The Seth Materials, which has been out for many years, which came before. But how did you and your group of friends even discover the process? Was there any books that you specifically read, or was it just through your friend Amy?
Yes. So Wendy Kennedy was the originator of the channeling, right?
Okay.
She had gone through her own process, and she was having visions, and she was feeling things, and I can't remember exactly how she discovered the word channeling or knew that's what she was supposed to do. But at some point, she felt the impetus to start writing, and that's when she had her breakthrough moment in channeling. She then discovered Barbara Marciniak's work, right? Mm-hmm. So that had to come prior to the three of us awakening and doing our work just prior. I think Bringers of the Dawn may have been published in 94, 95, 96, somewhere around there, right? So it was just prior to the three of us having that awakening. And then there was another author at the time, two authors actually, Sanaya Roman and Dwayne Packer, and they wrote a book called Opening to Channel. Okay. And that's something that the three of us also used as a reference tool and a guide as we were doing it. But what also happened for the three of us was each of us had our own immediate and spontaneous channeling experiences before we really even knew what channeling was.
Yes.
So our experience brought us to the understanding of what channeling is, right? It was, wow, I just felt something massive, this massive love. I need to understand what this is. And then our mental bodies went on a search to fill in the information. And to be honest, that is now how we're operating as creators. So we started talking about prior to the end of 2012, right? But what happened on the winter solstice of 2012, or I should say the December solstice of 2012, right? Because we do, there is part of the world that experiences summer when you and I, Joe, experience winter, right?
Yes, of course.
So the December solstice of 2012, that last solstice of 2012, took us through a gateway that propelled us into an entirely new reality, where it became possible for us to begin accessing our fifth dimensional consciousness from within our own bodies. Mm-hmm. So we are in the midst of this massive shift in our operating system, where we're no longer using law of attraction, or no longer going to be. We're still using it, but we're using it now in tandem with the universal law of creation, which operates off of vibration and frequencies held and maintained within your own personal energy field in your third dimensional chakra system and in your fifth dimensional chakra system. And it is the focusing of these vibrations and frequencies that allow us to create more rapidly. You probably notice this within yourself right now, that we're experiencing an acceleration now in our manifestation process and in the creation of our realities. We're able to transmute trauma much more quickly than we used to be able to do, and we are able to create much more quickly. We're not quite yet at instantaneous manifestation. That is full on fifth dimensional consciousness work. None of us are there yet, but we're working on this blended reality now of 3D and 5D operating systems. So if you default to heavy emotions, you're going to start running law of attraction based off of the density and the heaviness of the emotions, whether they be happy emotions or sad emotions, right? I'm talking completely here about the emotional roller coaster and where that takes us. Holding vibration and frequency is a much calmer experience. It's not nearly as dramatic, which allows us to maneuver much more easily and much more quickly and create in a much more rapid way.
Yes.
That's the operating, that's what we're enabling now.
What I was curious about is, because I've listened to this information, so I'm a bit privy to this. If someone was to ask about the dimensional aspect of this, could you explain a little bit about the kind of spectrum of dimensions and what that means? Because one thing I was always curious to ask is, where is the fourth dimension? If we were in third and then we're aiming to go into the fifth, which would be the kind of state of creation, what would the transitory state in between that be?
Yes, so that is the fourth dimension, the transitory dimension, and we're actually in it right now.
Got it, right. All right, that makes so much sense.
The difference between a third dimensional experience and a fifth dimensional experience is so dramatic that we needed an entire dimension to play in to facilitate this shift, because we're doing something that has never been done before. So to be clear, while physically incarnate in the same body, we are shifting from a third dimensional consciousness to a fifth dimensional consciousness. Typically, when we've made those kinds of shifts in the past, we would die, right? And leave our third dimensional experience and then project our energy into a fifth dimensional consciousness as a whole other version, whole other entity, whole other being. So we're doing something right now via the integration of our higher selves into our third dimensional chakra system, which facilitates the activation of fifth dimensional consciousness from within. So the fourth dimension is like a whiteboard, right? It's just, so you get to throw up on that whiteboard either 3D reality or the 5D reality or a blended version of 3D and 5D reality. And what's recently happened via this last solstice gateway, so the December solstice of 2019, is we just jumped timelines to a higher octave of the fourth dimension, an octave we had previously not been able to reach. So a dimension is not flat. It's within itself multidimensional, and there's movement up and down within that dimension. So we're able to access now a higher experience of the fourth dimension than ever before, which gives us even more access to our fifth dimensional consciousness and everything that goes along with that, which is telepathy, telekinesis, being more empathic, manifesting at a greater rate of return, at a more accelerated rate of return, an acceleration in collective consciousness and collective. I mean, God, we've seen this in the last decade, right? Look where collective consciousness was sitting 10 years ago. Let's just take LGBTQ, right, for instance, a decade ago, and look at where we are now. Like, holy shit, we're in another universe.
Yeah, it's been crazy. Like, when I was in school, like during that period, I can imagine that things would have been this open. Like, it was so funny. One of my friends' younger siblings is now non-binary, whereas like when I was actually like this androgynous creature in school, it was not easy. And now it's like everyone was also. I went to this birthday party for them on their 16th, and they had all these like kids from school there, and they were all like, all the gender roles were out the window. I was like, my God, how did this even happen? When I'm part of this, but I was like, I didn't even know. I couldn't even imagine being that young and being like that. It was insane and so beautiful.
Yes.
And when we're talking about all of this information, so when you first started to channel, you connected with spirit guides, and what would the difference be between, say, a spirit guide and you use the term your higher self?
Yeah, I love that. I love those questions. They're fantastic. So the difference between the higher self and then a spirit guide or some other guiding entity, right, is kind of, again, I'm going to give a multidimensional answer on this, because the truth is there is not ever any one answer to anything.
Yes.
Yeah, right. I let go of trying to find the ultimate truth a very long time ago, when I began to realize that as creator beings, each one of us, how could there be any one truth, right?
Yeah.
There is many versions of reality as there are beings to interpret reality, right? And then we have our collectively agreed upon versions of reality, which are changing at an accelerated rate, which we just talked about when we were talking about trans and non-binary and what's happening in gender fluidity, right? So the higher self I see as our fifth dimensional consciousness. So every single one of us in the third dimension has a counterpart in the fifth dimension that I also refer to as the higher self. And it is basically the version of us we are evolving into in this moment in time. For the higher self right now is to find your own higher self, your own fifth dimensional consciousness within first your heart chakra and then the rest of your chakra system. The work that we're doing, a lot of us right now, and it is real work for all of us, is to invite that fifth dimensional vibration, consciousness, love into our lower chakra system, meaning chakras 3, 2, 1, the solar plexus, the pelvic area, the base of the spine, and the soles of the feet. I always include the soles of the feet in the first chakra, just like I include the palms of the hand in the heart chakra, because it's a more accurate interpretation of how we work as beings. But when you put the root chakra in the soles of the feet, then you're allowing your energetic structure to literally connect with the grid work of Earth itself, and allows you to be a more grounded version of a higher consciousness in your body, right? If you cut yourself off at the butt, right?
Yes.
You see the first chakra, right? Then you're kind of floating above Earth.
Yes. That was so funny.
What?
Yes, that was something that it just made so much more sense when I first started to listen to your advice on how to use the body as almost like this technology. I had this really strange experience like last year where I used to be comfortable like in meditation or trance, whatever, identifying my 3-dimensional chakra system. And then I had this like moment where I suddenly I felt like I had wings. I know it sounds really crazy. It probably sounds crazy to everyone, but I felt like I had all of these different chakra systems that was literally like someone had the same thing that I knew, but wings. And I was like, what the hell is this going on? And I didn't know what was going on. But after then I was like, okay, I need to ask someone about this. But is that the 5-dimensional chakra system?
Yes, you're accessing your 5D self. It's actually, you're describing something I've heard many times before.
Is that real?
So
I
it's not weird or strange. You're also coupling that with the memory of lifetimes of actually being a winged being, an angelic or a fairy or something like that. And this is what happens when we integrate the 5th dimensional technology into our 3rd dimensional system. We give ourselves access to all of our records.
Yes.
I want to finish answering that question on the difference between higher self and then the guides.
Sure.
So the way I perceive any kind of spirit guiding entity or guardian angel or extraterrestrial collective that are working in a guiding capacity, etc., they'll all sit then at a 6th dimensional vibration or frequency or above. Now, I use the term guide because we understand what that means, but often that will cause us to project a kind of either authoritarian personality onto the being that we're working with, or some kind of hierarchy or structure, and they do not want us to do that. Mm-hmm. They're constantly reminding me that they are simply offering a different perspective. They have one perspective because they sit on that particular dimension. We have another perspective that is equally as valid. And as we gain love and information and help and support and knowledge from them, well, they get the same from us as we're collaborating and sharing information back and forth.
So when we are thinking about the scale of connection that we can actually reach, how do we define what is a good connection to have and what is not? Because I know we could say like any connection you could learn from, but I think a lot of people, especially people that have been aware of psychics or mediums, there is a fear attached to that from all this spiritualist stuff where you could channel The Exorcist or something and your head can start spinning around. So how do we... How do we kind of like avoid that? And is there like, I know we shouldn't operate from fear, but what if people were looking to find guidance? Is there any rules to this, or is there any guides that you could?
Yeah, and the rules have changed a little bit. Again, at the end of 2012, everything changed. So when I first started channeling, I would put myself in a protective bubble of white light and do like a 3-time chant to call in beings of the highest vibration possible to me. And that worked, right? That was what you had to do as third dimensional beings, because channeling was a lot harder than, like you said, it was not really in the collective consciousnness, even what channeling was. Like, we knew the term medium back then, but channel, well, most people didn't know what the hell that was when I told people I was, new to channeling. Like, I was waitressing. I left the restaurant one night, went to my friend Amy's house, had this intense spiritual experience of connecting with my spirit guide, Mirando, for the very first time consciously, felt this amazing unconditional love, left her apartment completely altered, went to work the next day and started telling everyone I'd met my spirit guide and was channeling, right?
Yes.
I went from waitress, actress, pretty quote unquote normal. Mm-hmm. Not really. I mean, I was never really normal right? at all. I mean, I'm bisexual, right? So that
fabulous
was something already that I had gone through. And that was very dramatic for me, because I was like hardcore boy crazy heterosexual till I was 27 years old. I had no idea, no inkling that I could possibly have a relationship with a woman, a sexual relationship, and then I fell in love with a woman.
Yes.
Right? And spent 5 years in and out of that relationship. And then when that ended, so then I thought, well, okay, I'm gay, right? So I just adopted that identifier because it was just easier. Trying to be bisexual in the 90s.
Oh, God.
Right?
Yes.
It was so hard. I mean, it's still the most discriminated against sexual orientation by all groups, because there's such a lack of understanding about what bisexuality is.
Oh, yes. And there's such a spectrum of that, because, like, for example, my partner's a straight guy and he thought I was a cisgender woman when he met me, but no, I'm not. He got a surprise. So he doesn't even know what he is anymore, but I don't mind.
Exactly. Right. So
he's mine. That's all everyone needs to know.
Then I was gay for a few years because that was just easier, right? To explain to my parents that I was gay at 27, 28, 29. And then when she and I broke up, I just knew I was going to be with a man next. Like, I knew that completely. And this was as I was coming into my channeling abilities. So that was just, I was certain about that from an intuitive place, and met my partner, Jonathan, who I've been with now for almost 21 years.
Yes.
Shortly after, 6 months after she and I had finished. And then for a long time, I didn't really own the identity of bisexual. What I did then was, I never hid the fact that I was in a relationship with a woman, but I kind kind of would just say, well, that was just a one-off, right? Like, now I'm back to being hetero.
Yes.
And then I don't know when it was. At some point, I just realized, like, it was really important for me to claim my bisexuality and be very open about it as a guide.
It's so cool as well, because like it further affirms that we're all just energy, and whatever is there for the moment, if you know what I mean. Like,
absolutely.
You described your first connection with your guide Morondo.
Yes.
Is he a Pleiadian?
No. Morondo is a spirit guide, right? So
right.
I don't slap a cosmic identifier on him, right? He's a full-on spirit guides entity who actually was my full-time guide for a while in tandem with the Pleiadians. I met the Pleiadians then very shortly after my initial conscious meeting with Morondo. Then the Pleiadians showed up along with Wendy Kennedy in my life very shortly afterwards.
Okay.
But Morondo I always identify spirit guide is a little bit different. Just like I would identify an angelic is different and a fairy is different and all the other beings we work with. And to answer that question about how to call in the highest, how to do it, right? Like what to do now. So, it used to be that bubble of white light and protection and incantation and like a whole ritual of connection. Now, because we are higher in our personal vibratory space as humans, all you really need to do is put yourself in your heart chakra, take a breath, feel yourself kind of raise your own vibration from within, just using your breath, getting to a very centered and loving space within yourself. And as you're pulsing that energy out, that's what you'll attract to you then in the form of other beings to work with, guides, angelics, extraterrestrial collectives, the big fairy, capital T, capital F. So when I use the term the fairies, I'm talking about fairies, elves, gnomes, unicorns, dragons. Oh, there's so many beings that kind of, the elementals, the devas, that fall under that umbrella of the term the fairies. So that's a big term there.
And that's to do with that's the fairies. For people that think, how do fairies connect with the alien system? You've done many speeches about galactic history, which is very, very interesting to me. I'm fascinated. I'm like a historian. One thing I wanted to ask you about this. I don't know if you'd be able to give me any insight about this, but a situation happened last year with me. One of my close friends, I'm not going to tell who, just out of respect for her privacy, but she basically was trying to learn about her spirituality, and something happened where we were in the hotel room before we were going to a meal, and that something spoke through me, and I told her that she had an illness that we found out was true. And just after this happened, there was an ashtray, and it split, a glass ashtray split in half like a yin-yang. And I was so distraught after this happened. I thought I was being taken over by something. And I don't know what I wanted to do it because I thought she needed to know. We were talking about something that was going on with her and her health. And I wanted to help her, and that was my kind of like intention, but I couldn't control it or know what was really going on. And it was so shocking because I've heard of so many examples of channeling from my research, but I didn't consciously look to do that. And I was so scared when the ashtray broke in half because it was like, oh my God, that's actually like physical. Like you could never like say, oh, I was just drunk as a skunk and just talking like la 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 la. It was like, oh my God, what is going on? And since then, I've always been a bit kind of like nervous about exploring it myself. But is it because I was freaking out not in my heart center?
It's because you were new to it.
Okay,
Really
okay.
Yeah. I mean, I had a number of really crazy things happen the first couple of years, especially like the first 6 months. Similar, right? I was waitressing one night and the restaurant was close to closing and the table had just come in and I was closing and I was like, come on, hurry up, right? Like just glaring at this guy, willing him to drink his beer more quickly so I could go home, and his beer glass broke in his hand.
Oh,
then
gosh.
I had to go get him another beer, right, which has extended my time in the restaurant.
Yes.
And yeah, so yes, I was not at all in my heart center in the moment, and I had opened myself up to playing with all of this energy, and I didn't yet really know how to use it. So I gave myself, like you did, some dramatic events to help demonstrate. I don't want to say the seriousness of it, right? Because that kind of sounds so foreboding and school marmy. The responsibility of it, right? It's like that Peter Parker thing from Spider-Man, right? Those with power. What the hell is that? I can't believe I'm
come great responsibility. Something like that.
Right? When you have power, it comes with greater responsibility, right?
Yes,
that. I mean, it's really true. And it's why a lot of us are not consciously actualized, because primarily anybody who isn't really on some level, you just aren't, because you don't feel ready with it.
Yeah.
And you will give yourself the experiences you need to put yourself in check when you need them. Now, I will share that I was driving home one night, really late at night in Chicago, and I was being followed by a couple of guys in a car, and I was getting near my apartment, and I didn't really think they were going to do something to me, but I was uncomfortable with the energy they were putting out as a young woman.
Yeah.
And I was getting very near to where I lived, and I was going to have to turn right to park my car in front of my apartment building. And I didn't want them to see where I lived. So I just kind of completely unconsciously, with no intent other than stay away from me, I flung my left hand towards them out the window. And the hood of their car flipped up.
Oh.
And they had to pull over. And I was able to turn the corner and park my car and go home without being seen. And I felt like that was an appropriate use of that energy. Right?
Yes.
And yet I was very startled by it. I had no expectation that would be the result. You know, it's like those stories you hear about, you know, there's a kid trapped under a car, and a human is, the mom lifts the car based on her adrenaline. Yeah, bullshit, that's adrenaline, right?
Yeah,
that is her accessing that fifth dimensional energy and technology and putting that to work. But typically, those moments are very spontaneous. There's not any planning, really. You're very in the moment when those things happen.
Yes, it can be very scary. Like, I've had other situations where I'm not going to go into the full story of it, but I was getting a blood test and I didn't tell my mum, and my mum was at work, and I got a text as I left the hospital, because I didn't want to scare her, thinking that I was sick, because I wasn't. But I was just being cautious and keeping it to myself. And my mum's arm bled when I got the injection, and when I got on the bus, I received a text from her saying, "My God, my left arm just erupted by my elbow," and it was like, oh my God, I can't even stop my mum knowing, like, when I wanted to, like, protect her, for God's sake. So I read all this stuff. It's all been going on in my life since this. But it's funny because, like, I think that a lot of people were just not aware this stuff was tangible. And it's like, I'm so happy that people are starting to now realize that there's been so much going on that we just were kind of blinkered to, and we're waking up to it.
Yes. Yes. And it is really a matter of choosing to put our conscious attention on what it is we want to do, right? Like, when I met Mirando that night for the first time, I set my conscious intent to connect with the spirit guide. Amy said, I met this woman who channels. I said, oh my God, that's the thing we're supposed to be doing. Let's do it. And when I full on met him, I realized in that moment I wasn't actually meeting him. I had felt his presence before, right? So part of my journey was I had experiences that led me to formulate thoughts and ideas. And as I crystallized those thoughts and ideas, my experiences got more powerful.
Yes. That's a really interesting thing, because, like, it's about, like, being aware, and that's almost a practice in itself, isn't it?
Completely. And giving permission.
Sure. There's one thing that I've actually need to thank you for, because it's really revolutionized my life, and that's the technique that I think the Pleiadians brought through, that's called FOAL, FOAL. That has been so instrumental in my own growth as a person, because I would get stuck. And would you like to explain a little bit about FOAL? Because I can have a convo with you, and you can probably tell I'm excited to talk to you. But what is FOAL, and how can that be a practice people can introduce to their life?
Yes, I would love to explain it, but actually the Pleiadians would really love to explain it. So I'm going to let them through. They've been knocking on my energy field now for a while. So I knew they were going to show up here at some point during our conversation.
Oh my God, okay.
Greetings. This is the Pleiadian Collective. Joe.
Hello.
Wonderful to have the opportunity to connect with you and all of you beautiful universal beings of love and light who are tuning in. Thank you. Thank you for opening your hearts and your consciousness to something that may feel a bit new for you right now. So we're going to explain full, but we're going to run you through the process as well. We want as many of you as possible to have this very simple process that facilitates the transmutation of underlying unhealed traumas and untransmuted traumas to facilitate the integration of the higher self and the fifth dimensional consciousness. Because the only thing that's getting in your way now of fully integrating your 5D consciousness into the containers of your bodies are your own unhealed traumas. That's it. That's all that's sitting in your personal way. So full is a way to simply clear without attaching any story, right? You're moving beyond story and the need for story. So the first thing you want to do, so let's have you all do this, is just take a breath, put your attention on yourself, and give yourself permission to feel whatever it is you are feeling right now, however it is you are feeling, fully and without judgment. This can be emotionally, physically, energetically, could be whatever is going on in your head. We know mental body doesn't really feel, but we include it in this process. So get in touch with you where you're at right in this moment and let yourself highlight anything that needs attention, right? So give yourself permission full on to feel your discomfort. So this is the F in full. Feel fully without judgment. Whatever it is you're feeling, it's not right, it's not wrong, it just is. It's true. That's it. So now as you're feeling fully, the second piece of full is to then begin observing yourself from within as you feel. So you're feeling, and now you're also observing as you feel. So the observational you that you have just brought online is your fifth dimensional consciousness from within. So your 5D self is now facilitating this process. 3D you is feeling whatever it is you need to feel, and 5D you is observing and holding the space for you as you're feeling. And then the next step is acceptance. This is the A. So observe is the O, accept is the A. So now we want you to just accept yourself exactly as you are in this moment with whatever it is you're feeling, with no desire whatsoever to change, which activates an automatic transmission of unconditional love. This is the L piece of full that begins to run in your body like an engine, right? It's this beautiful, gentle, unconditional love for yourself. And this love then replicates itself and moves to any version of you on any timeline that needs it, that's associated with this unhealed trauma, whether the versions of you be earlier versions of you from this incarnation or versions of you from other lifetimes and other incarnations. And that's why you get to remove story here. You work in a multi-dimensional way with yourself, suddenly transmuting underlying traumas from multiple lifetimes that you're currently carrying in your energy field right now. And as you clear that trauma, that allows the fifth dimensional consciousness to take hold more firmly within your third dimensional energetic structure and bodies. And just breathe here.
Wow, thank you. Wow.
And just so you all know, I have that in a blog post on my blog on my site. Oh, this is Nora again. I always like to, once I start channeling, I like to announce who's talking. So this is how I work as a channel now, right? It's very quick for me to shift back and forth between bringing through the Pleiadians or Ursula or whoever is coming through, and then moving back into Nora, giving the microphone back to Nora, because I do what I would call at this point, I used to call it semi-conscious channeling. I think I've moved into being a full-on conscious channel at this time, meaning a large part of the time when I'm speaking now, I am also aware of the Pleiadians' presence, the presence of the other beings I work with, integrated into my energy field, and they're kind of constantly contributing. So I perceive myself to be more than Nora now. I'm Nora, I'm my higher self, and I'm also all these beings that I work with on a regular basis.
So it's remarkable, and it's even, I think, listening to your voice offers this energetic healing thing that I responded to as soon as I started to listen to one of your first seminars that I found. So thank you so much for sharing that with my audience, because I think so many people would benefit just from that simple practice. And it can be something that you introduce in a meditation or in your everyday. It's not a complex thing. It's just something that works.
It does, yeah. I mean, I'll use it sometimes, like in the middle of my day, whatever I'm doing, right? You can, once you get practiced at using full, and it's pretty easy to get practiced at using it.
Yes.
You can run it while driving your car or grocery shopping or doing anything, really, right?
Yes.
I can be in the middle of a fight with John, my husband, partner. I mean, we're not legally married, but a calm husband.
Same with me, mine.
21 years, like after 21 years saying my boyfriend doesn't really work. Right? I can be in the middle of a fight with him and also be running full at the same time, because if I'm fighting with him, clearly I have shit to deal with in myself.
Yes. You mentioned your collectives outside of the Pleiadians, and I was interested to find out about Ursula, because from what I understand, she's a fairy being, and so my dad would always joke with me and say I was away with the fairies because I'd be like sprightly and like running around. But I don't know anything about this sort of things because I've listened to mostly the Pleiadians. So would you be able to give some information about the fairies and Ursula and a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started channeling about the fairies very early on, right? Fairies were always of interest to me because I am part fairy in my genetic line. I'm half Irish by descent in my ancestry, and I can track that back now energetically to beings who are incarnate on planet Earth as fairy. So third-dimensional fairies, right?
Okay.
Physical, humanoid-looking beings who were a different genetic line called fairy.
Right, and people have identified that there's been so many different strains of like humanoid on this planet that's not just the Homo sapien. There's all these different things that we're now identifying as part of our mythos in some way. Yeah.
Yes. And then there are other fairy beings who have ascended to fifth and sixth dimensional spaces. And when I was getting ready to channel for a radio program in 2010, I felt a being hook up with me. Immediately, I knew her to be fairy, and that was very exciting for me because I felt like that was the first time I was getting ready to channel a fairy. She told me that her name was Kaliandra, which I looked up later. I looked up the word Kaliandra later. And Kaliandra is a flower. It's a flowering shrub on our planet. And its common name is fairy duster.
Oh, my God.
Right. I was like, oh, my God. Like, I still get startled by that stuff and love it. And I recommend that to all of you as you're coming into this, right? Google the stuff you start uncovering as you're channeling. You will find correlating data that backs up and confirms that your magic is real.
Yes, 100%. Those synchronicities are really important.
Yes, so Kaliandra came through, and I already had a fairy living in my home in the body of my cat.
That's so cool.
The Smurf.
The Smurf, okay.
Right? Whose formal name was Ursula when we adopted her.
I see.
Yes. So we adopted Ursula, back in 2008, along with her sibling Isabella, Izzy. And I knew Izzy to be Pleiadian, and I knew Ursula to be fairy immediately. So Kaliandra came through. I started channeling Kaliandra. Izzy died in 2014.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And thank you. And Izzy immediately rejoined the Pleiadian collective, right? Like, I felt that happen almost immediately when she left. And then the Smurf died in August.
Oh, I'm sorry again.
Thank you. I'm still processing at times my grief around that. But one of the beautiful things that happened when Ursula left her body was, so we had many magical experiences around her passing. We had to have her euthanized. She had cancer and tumors in her mouth, and she wasn't ready physically to go yet, right? Her organs were not shutting down, but she was ready to leave her body. It was clear. So we facilitated that for her, and we brought her body home. And John and I took a nap shortly after we had done that. And as we were lying in the bed, we both could hear the sound of purring just filling our home.
Wow.
It was, and she was our last cat. We have only dogs now, so she was our last cat to leave, and her energy was so powerfully present with me. It was very different from when Izzy died. Izzy died, and she went and rejoined the Pleiadian collective. Ursula died. She reverted back to her fifth dimensional fairy state immediately and let me know she would not be going anywhere. She would be joining my team of beings that I channeled. Okay. And I said, no, you're not. Right? Like, sorry, but
she sounds very regal.
Is enough that I channel extraterrestrials and fairies. I am not channeling my dead cat. Which is not. Sorry, Ursula. Oh. And she said, nice try. It's in the contract, so good luck with that, right? And my very next public transmission, which was just a week after she died, maybe just a few days, I think, after she died, Ursula came through, and she's very much integrated herself into my work now, and she's bringing with her this amazing information about the fairies and the technology that is fairy in origin, and the truth that every single one of us has some version of fairy running in our bodies. And we've entered, as we went through this last solstice gateway, a period of time she and the Pleiadians are referring to as the return of the fairies. And we're seeing it reflected both in our own physical bodies and our physical experiences. We become more and more obviously magical here as beings on Earth. And then we're also going to be able to start literally seeing manifestations of fairy energy in our day-to-day life. And I've already had reports back from people who follow my work that they've been having these experiences, right? Somebody went out in the forest and there was this green light and she just knew immediately it was fairy, and it was something she'd not experienced before. So I see the fairies as our part of our genetic line, and then I see them as guides, I see them as friends, and I see them as kind of a signpost. Who they are now is what we are evolving into. And I do see the non-binary movement, the trans movement, the sexual fluidity movement, all of that tied into the return of the fairies.
There's something something happened with my little niece. We take her to the window of my family home. This sounds so ridiculous. And this thing jumped up, and it was like it was a cat, but it wasn't a cat. And she won't stop talking about the bloody cat. She's like, Jojo, the cat jumps. And I was like, it was just, something strange was going on there. And everything keeps going like missing in this house at the moment. And my jewelry keeps snapping and things. And I think that there's something fairy-like going on. I just have a feeling.
Have you formally invited the fairies into your home?
I kind of did.
Yeah. Well, then that's why you're having those experiences. So
yes.
I'll just share, I became familiar with Brian Froud's work with the fairies, I don't know, 20 years ago or so, right around the time I started channeling. Brian Froud is an English artist, creator, writer. He's worked in Hollywood and done some films on the fairies, and he has some books out there, and he collaborated with the author Jessica Macbeth and they created something called the Fairies Oracle, which is a divination tool for working with the fairies and the fairy guides, the fairies as guides. I love it. I've had the Fairies Oracle now. I think I got it right around the time it came out.
Okay.
So, yeah, I highly recommend it.
Amazing. I'll have to check it out.
Where was I going with this? Oh, yeah. When I got the Fairies Oracle, I realized as I brought the book and deck into my home, I was also inviting every single one of those beings into my home space. And, yeah, for like a week or two, things would go missing, and we were having like crazy little fairy experiences. And I think we have this perspective, right, and even misperception that the fairies are mischievous. They're not. I mean, they can be mischievous just like we all can, right? Any one of us can be mischievous, right? We can operate in that playful way. The fairies are profoundly powerful, gigantic beings.
Wow.
So we experience those minor disruptions in part because we're adjusting to their energy and their presence in our lives. And that's sometimes just like with the breaking of the ashtray or the glass, right? Things go a little kooky
Yes,
in
yeah.
our reality as we're making those adjustments. But that is about us adjusting.
That makes so much sense then. Well, I will bear with it and see what happens next, because I'm very intrigued by that. But it's funny, my dad used to always say to me, I'm always away with the fairies, because I would try and look at like the lighter side of things and try and be positive, even if it probably wasn't appropriate to be that happy about it. But it's good to be away with the fairies, whatever that means then.
Absolutely. Well, the fairies, in large part, are able to maintain the vibration and frequency of joy at all times without any effort, no matter what else is happening. So I think in the third dimension, sometimes that's a little bit of a spiritual bypassing tool, right? To just go to the light and the nice and I'm not going to deal with this shit, right?
Yes.
We can't really do that and integrate and reascend. We have to stay in our bodies and deal with our stuff.
Yeah.
The fairies are experts at maintaining that joyful state no matter what the fuck is happening and still dealing with what is happening.
I see. Well, that makes sense then. That makes sense. Could I divert off into something that leads from your work as a channel, but is very interesting to me because I now know that you work on the Bernie Sanders campaign, and I wanted to hear about what your motivation was, because I think that it links to your work as a channel, but I'd like to hear more.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking, and I'd love to share about it. So, I think I first became aware of Bernie Sanders in the 90s. I heard him speaking in the late 90s, I think, when he was a congressman. I just caught a clip of something on TV, and I remember stopping and thinking to myself, wow, who is that being who's talking about humanity in a way that you don't normally hear politicians talk about, right?
Yeah.
As deserving of so much more than the limited reality we currently give ourselves and give ourselves via the government. And then when he voted no on the Iraq war, again, I said, oh my God, right? There's Bernie. I knew we were being lied to back then by our government. So I'm like, who is this guy again who's able to see the truth of that, see through the lies, and vote his conscience, which went markedly against where, after 9/11 in the United States, the march to war, 99% of the consciousness was there. There were very few of us saying, no, let's stop. That doesn't seem right. So to hear Bernie promote that, vote no on that, and promote that viewpoint was significant for me. So then I started just talking to him and be like, hey, Bernie, run for president. I would send him these telepathic messages. Meanwhile, working as a channel, full-time, working as a healer, not at all doing anything outwardly political, right? I actually kind of felt back then, and I felt for a long time, like it wasn't appropriate for me as a Pleiadian channel to get involved in politics.
Sure.
Because politics is so third dimensional, right? Ugh, so low vibrational,
yes.
right? So black and white. And this was all prior to the end of 2012 when we were still running a lot of separation. And there was something about that felt actually appropriate. Like it was appropriate for those things to be separate. All right. So fast forward to 2015, I started hearing rumors that Bernie might run for president. And I could feel like this excitement in my body. And at that point, I was identifying him as Pleiadian. Now, I don't know what Bernie would think about that. But from my perspective, Bernie holds Pleiadian consciousness and carries that vibration and frequency and energy with him.
Yes,
so
I can
when
see.
he announced he was running, I signed up to volunteer and gave him money. 2 things I had never done before in the political reality. And I was with him and the organization all the way through the end of 2016 and the primaries there. And then I took a break from it all because he wasn't running for president. And then when it looked like he might run again, people would say, are you gonna get involved again? And I was like, I don't really know. It takes it's an incredible amount of time and energy that I'm spending doing it. So I was kind of ambivalent, right? And then on February 19th of last year, 2019, so almost exactly a year ago, actually probably when this ends, when this airs, it will have been a year ago.
Yes.
He announced, and immediately I'm like, here's my $27, sign me up to volunteer.
Yes.
And I'm currently helping to support the texting program. So we have tens of thousands of volunteers nationwide. So I'm working directly with staff, helping to facilitate the managing of the volunteers in that program and supporting them, helping them. My work within the campaign is very similar to my work as a channel and a guide. I am constantly being asked to help people and guide them and support them within the context of the campaign. And then going beyond that, because things are so intense, right? Politically and intense in our political consciousness, that energy can be very demoralizing and draining for those who are involved and working on it. I mean, it's demoralizing and draining to all of us, right?
Yes.
So I asked staff if I could create something called the Joy Squad within our national organizing system. And the Joy Squad gets to run around the message board that we work in and just give love and joy and support and happiness and positivity to all of the volunteers working there. And
that's so nice.
Really yeah. And it completely dovetails, right, with my work.
Yes.
And the other piece of it is, I can't lie to myself any longer and say that politics is outside of me or doesn't affect me or I'm not political, because if I'm going to channel about and believe that we are all one here and that everything one being does affects every other being and everything one being is experiencing is also my experience, then of course I'm political. As I'm spiritual, as I'm everything.
Absolutely. And I did a thing for Google a couple of years ago where they do the year of review, and they asked me to do a tribute to David Bowie for it because he just died. And there was a section that I never saw until they put that out there of Bernie where the bird flew down and landed on the microphone. So when I saw that and in the same video, I was like, oh my God, that man is it. And so I'm eagerly hoping and wishing that whatever the weather, his movement benefits people. And it's amazing that you're working on it. So well done. How do I say that?
You.
That's so awesome. So sorry, go ahead.
We have volunteers from all over the world, right? You can't financially contribute and participate in Bernie's campaign as a non-U.S. citizen, but you can volunteer. So if anybody interested, anyone listening is interested, you can go to berniesanders.com/volunteer and sign up to volunteer for the campaign. And everything is browser based, right? All our texting and our calling, and it's very easy to do from wherever you're at via your computer. And it's a lot of fun.
Amazing. Well, I hope people check that out. In addition to your work that you're doing there, you also, I should go back and say what else you do. So do you still offer one-on-one sessions to people that are interested in maybe getting a healing or a personal reading from you? Or do you focus mainly on seminars, as you have one coming up that's about love spells?
Yeah, I do a limited number of one-on-one sessions a month. I find one-on-one sessions to be extremely valuable, especially in combination with the group work. So I'm still keeping myself available for a limited number of one-on-one sessions a month, which you can book via my website. But I also then offer multiple group experiences a month. So the first week of the month, always, usually on a Tuesday, but sometimes on a Wednesday now, depending on the campaign schedule. I've had to move some things to Wednesdays, right? I do a monthly transmission. So that's in the first week of the month, I just do the standard monthly transmission from the Pleiadians and Ursula, where I'll do about a half hour of lecture style format, transmission and channeling. And then the next hour is Q&A with all of the attendees. I get to as many people as I can. And you can call in via phone or the web dialer, which works like Skype, or you can just listen via the webcast if you want as well. And then typically the third week of the month, so this is what I have coming up next week, I do some kind of longer form topic specific workshop and transmission. So recently I've kind of shifted into doing a lot around magic and reinventing magic a bit in our consciousness, what we understand magic to be, helping to debunk a lot of the myths and fears around magic, and helping everyone tuning in to deactivate their own implants that prevent them from accessing their own magic and transmuting underlying traumas relating to magic, right? I remember for a long period of time, I felt like it was wrong for me to do magic. I'm talking about until just very recently, which is fascinating as I observe this.
I felt exactly the same thing. It's very strange. I felt like an embarrassing shame's been lifted.
Yeah. This is the Return of the Fairies thing. This is part of it, part of the Return of the Fairies. So now a lot of my work is centered around magic, which is really just operating as a creator being, right? We're just repackaging that information and calling it magic. But it's pulling in a whole new kind of group of people that are very interested in that term and and I think it's normalizing this work a bit.
Yeah.
Kind of moving it out of niche channel understanding of spiritual woo-woo, new agey, la-la land, right? Into a more grounded, I'm going to work some day-to-day magic in my life. So my workshop on the night, is it the 19th? No, it's the 20th. February 20th is called Love Spells of All Kinds. And the program will be all about activating and accessing more unconditional love for the self and others, and spells and very simple spells, simple ways to bring that energy of unconditional love into your physical reality, right? That's a big piece of this magic work that I'm doing right now, is the simplicity of holding a vibration or a frequency in our bodies, pairing a simple action that allows you to feel that energy, right? And that's the spell. So
yes.
John and I have also put together now this video web series. I think it's going to be a series. We've done 2 episodes on it now, called Everything's a Spell. So you can get that on my YouTube channel. We just dropped the second episode just today. February 14th is when we're having this conversation. So Valentine's Day.
Yay.
It's called, right, A Cup of Tea for Harmony, and it is a little bit of a love spell that we did here for us in our home. The first spell was the first episode was our Smash the Patriarchy potatoes.
I saw. It looked delicious.
That was about some astrology that was happening in January, this conjunction of Saturn and Pluto in the sign of Capricorn happening for the first time in a very long time. So Capricorn is all about our power structures and literally the patriarchy. So we released that episode on that day of that astrological conjunction. And it's just me making my Smash the Patriarchy potatoes and incorporating spiritual and channeled and astrological ideas and concepts into the recipe itself. And that was a lot of fun. So yeah, we'll be doing more of those, definitely.
Amazing. And what I will do is I'll add all your website details and your YouTube links to the details surrounding where this goes up online. And I'll pop a little bit on my website about you as well, just so people can find a full link to you. So thank you so much, Nora, for taking the time out of your Valentine's Day to speak to me, because I am fangirling out here a little bit. But
Aww, thank you.
Your
Thank
work
you
is so
much.
valuable, and you're such a lovely person to have such compassion to teach people and to share this with people. So thank you. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Joe. I wish I could hug you in person. Your love and your beauty and your bravery and shining your light in the way that you do, those things are all truly exceptional in you. And it's really been my honor to sit in conversation with you.
Oh, my God. Thank you. All right, Nora. Well, take care.
Wait. I have a question for you.
Oh, okay.
I was told to ask you this question. Do you have a particular star system that you align with and have an affinity for?
I have been having this sort of like dialogue with myself, and I've been really nervous to listen to the answer, because I was trying to request some sort of information and I kept hearing this Hecate thing in my head, and I was like, I don't know what this is, but I thought that was a witchy woman. So I thought it was because I put my title I jokingly put my title in my company as head witch. And then I was like, oh my God, did I just create this? And who am I talking to? Am I talking to some witchy goddess thing? And then I was like, is this even like my imagination? I didn't know where I was going. And then I kept on seeing like the Orion thing. And I was like, is that not like the bad place? And then I was like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on. So I've taken a break from exploring.
Okay, so Orion is not bad.
Okay.
Right? We call them the Orion Wars because those wars started, which happened those wars went on for hundreds, if not thousands of years. They started in and around the Orion constellation, which is why they're called the Orion Wars. And the Orion beings certainly were a part of them, but just like all beings in the universe, they're not good or bad. They are both good and bad, just as physically incarnate Pleiadians are good and bad, physically incarnate Lyrans are good and bad, etc., right? We're all everything. Now, the Pleiadians that I channel, that I work with, are 12th dimensional. They're not physically incarnate. They don't hold that polarity of good and bad any longer in the projection of their energy. So if you're drawn to Orion, release your attachment and connection to the notion that Orion is in any way bad or the bad guys, because it's not at all accurate or true, and let yourself open up to that.
Yeah. I think the Pleiadians have spoken to me before as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. I also feel you have strong fairy and Lyran energy as well.
See, I thought it was to do with the Lyrans, because I can remember like.
See, why didn't you just say Lyran?
No, because I didn't.
First, I asked you the question.
Because I didn't know if Lyra was a star system, so I knew what the Lyrans was, but I didn't know. No, that definitely, because I can remember how to do things, like I can build things that I've never been taught to build before, and I can do things like that. But it was always like, I felt like it was like a different energy that was channeling through me when I was doing most of my art stuff, and I didn't know how to do a lot of it. It just came through me, and it was definitely to do with that Lyran energy, for sure.
Yes, 100%, yes.
Thank you for identifying that, but I was like, I don't know, because is Lyra a star system?
I mean, that's the way I interpret it, yes. I mean, there's...
Oh.
So when you say star system, right, there's the star... Star system to me means there's at least one star with planetary bodies around it.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Just like our solar system, right? We have our sun and then our planetary bodies around it. So I would this could be interpreted as a star system.
Yes,
We're all aligned with this particular star. So when I talk about the Lyrans, there are planets around a particular star there that they connect with. Yes.
That's so fun. And I'm really tall as well. I'm much taller than people anticipate. I'm like 6'3", and then with Hills I'm like nearly 7 foot. So it's like I'm always like this like beast. So I think it makes sense.
That's such a British thing to say, beast. We
Yes.
would never say that in the U.S. in any kind of positive or beautiful way.
Oh, I don't mind being called a beast. I call my partner a heifer all the time, and he's like, "You do know that's a cow?" And I'm like, "Oh."
Yes, if you called me a heifer in the United States, you would be calling me fat. Definitely.
Oh my God. Oh, I better not say that then. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, well, thank you so much, Nora, for taking the time. I will send love to you and John, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Valentine's.
Thank you, Joe. You too. Thanks. It's been so much fun.
So that was the incredible opportunity for me and the insightful interview with the amazing Nora Herold. You can find her information in the description of my website post, but also in the SoundCloud and iTunes. You can also find her website by searching Nora Herold. It's very easy to get to. She has a number of services that she offers to the public, whether it be personal readings or healing sessions. She also offers seminars and webcasts where she gives further information as she channels various beings and collectives, whether a fairy. Now, I was very interested to find out about all of this, so I'm sure you guys will definitely be too. So I hope you guys take care. I hope you tune back for more information about this, and I can't wait to explore more of this with you. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening, and take care.